Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. I'm back from a few days in the West Country, and I hope you've all had a wonderful day in this amazing weather and are not stuck in two horrendous traffic jams. Well, it's supposed to be the silly season, where we get stories about great white sharks on Cornish beaches and all the rest of it, but actually, pretty big political news over the course of the last couple of days. You know, for the early months of this year, I kept asking the question, can someone please tell me, what is the Labour Party's position apropos Brexit? Where do they stand on any of this? And I really wasn't very sure until the launch of the Labour manifesto. And there was Corbyn, and he said, we will leave the single market, we will leave the customs union, and we will end the free movement of people. It simply couldn't have been clearer. And whilst there were many in the party on his backbenches that rather disagreed with that, that was the position. And it did actually reap him a huge bonus, because the feeling in the election was the UKIP vote would melt away and it would all go to Mrs May because she was standing up for Brexit. But Corbyn effectively managed with his manifesto to box that off and benefited hugely from many Labour votes, particularly in the Midlands and the north of England. And then, after the election, on the Andrew Marr show, he was asked the question again. Here he is.
The single market is dependent on membership of the EU. What we've said all along is that we want a tariff-free trade, access to the European market and a partnership with Europe in the future.
Well, there we are, making it perfectly clear that as far as he was concerned, being part of the single market was exactly the same thing as being in the European Union. We'd had the referendum. It was time for us to get on and leave. And he then went even further than that, because when the Queen's speech was put before Parliament, there was an amendment urging us to stay part of the single market, and 3 of his own shadow front benchers voted for this Chuka Umunna proposal. And do you know what he did? Within literally minutes of them going against the line, he sacked them. And all of this led me to speculate that perhaps we were going to see the real principled Corbyn, the man that we knew had been a Tony Benn supporter and an opponent of the European project. And I started saying some quite nice things about him on this show, saying that I hoped that he would perhaps try to really harry the government to make them get on with Brexit and make sure that it was a clean Brexit. Well, folks, I was wrong. Completely wrong. Because clearly there isn't much principle at all with Corbyn. Clearly he's bowing to pressure from his backbenchers, because in yesterday's Observer, Keir Starmer, the shadow Brexit secretary, wrote a piece setting out Labour's new position, which is that during the transitional period after we leave the European Union at the end of March 2019, that Labour want us to stay part of the single market and part of the customs union. How long is that for? Mr Starmer said it would be as short as possible, but as long as necessary. What a wonderful weasel word statement. It must have taken them hours to work that out. And there are some very pro-EU Labour MPs and peers now saying this is great news. It may mean we don't have to leave the European Union at all. And I think that Corbyn has devalued himself, because one of the things about Corbyn is he's been seen to be somebody who's straight. And clearly on this, he has bent, he has buckled. And I have to say, I think that Labour voters out there in that general election have effectively been deceived by Mr Corbyn and the Labour Party. Do you agree with me? Perhaps you think I'm wrong. Perhaps you think, no, this was always going to be Labour's position. In which case, call me on 0345 60 60973. And maybe you're a Labour voter who feels like in the last 24 hours you've just been kicked in the teeth, in which case text to 84850, and maybe you feel that actually this is just Corbyn bowing to the majority numbers on his own backbenches, in which case using the hashtag Farage and LBC, tweet at LBC, and of course you can watch us live on Facebook as ever from here in London. And my first caller is John in Formby. John, were you surprised by Keir Starmer's piece in the Observer yesterday?
No, I'm coming around to the Bill Shankly view of life. I'm surprised when people are surprised.
Right. Yeah, Bill Shankly. There may be some people, John, and I know that Formby is very close to Liverpool, some of our younger listeners who don't know who Bill Shankly is, a legendary manager of Liverpool Football Club, who said that football was more important than life itself. So you weren't surprised at all, and is that because you took the view that Labour would be very cynical about Brexit?
Yes, I think politicians speak with forked tongues, and the trend recently has been for everyone to be changing, and the whole thing's a bit of a muddle. It's a case of you say hard Brexit, I say soft Brexit. Oh, let's call the whole thing off. Some months ago we spoke, and I said that the establishment position is just like the defence of Rorke's Drift. There are various fallback lines. The first thing is to kill it off. And if they can't kill it off, they'll try and water it down so it becomes meaningless. Well,
certainly your scepticism, John, and I do remember us talking about this, has been proved to be right. But, I mean, talk about barefaced cheek. Sir Keir Starmer himself, on the 25th of April, said that membership of the single market was incompatible with us controlling and cutting immigration numbers. Now, John, I think he said that on the 25th of April because there was an election on. And he wanted to try and get people who thought immigration should be controlled to vote Labour. Now the election's over, and they're going to have total, open, free movement of people, perhaps forever. So, John, I'm with you. It's a very cynical move. How should Labour voters, particularly in your part of the world, feel about this?
Well, cheated and deceived.
Yeah.
Dazed and confused. I think immigration is very important to this. That Labour want to hang on to mass immigration for as long as possible because it suits them, and the EU is a very important plank of that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. John, you go with my view that Labour voters have been deceived. I thank you for your call. Jimmy says to me, Mr. Farage, when will you admit that the UK will never leave the European Union? Never, Jimmy. Never. We are going to leave. The trouble is, I tell you the problem we've got, Jimmy, is that since the referendum, a significant chunk of this country now accept the democratic will of the people, and 68 to 70% of people in Britain now want us to simply get on with it. But, and John from Formby, our previous caller, was hinting at this, the political class, i.e. our MPs, and large sections of our media, were always wholesale opposed to that Brexit vote. And what you're seeing is public opinion going in this direction, and you've got the MPs going in the other direction. It is Parliament that is potentially the enemy of Brexit, because this isn't just the Labour Party that's doing this. There are, of course, voices like Anna Soubry in the Conservative Party welcoming this. But it is worth pointing out that, OK, Corbyn has thrown 35 years of principles out of the window on this, but it's not being met with total universal support. Kate Hoey, Labour MP for Vauxhall, said, "We did very well in the last general election by winning back some of those people who left Labour disillusioned and went to UKIP." Frank Field has expressed unhappiness. John Mann says there are a lot of ladders being laid by the shadow cabinet to the continent, and they require a clearly defined immigration policy for us to remain credible, and several anonymous quotes from Labour MPs as well. I would think that if you're a Labour MP from a strong Brexit constituency, you're going to be pretty nervous tonight about the direction this Labour Party has taken. Nigel, Labour has indeed duped us re-Brexit. They wanted us to remain and continue to take this stand. The Labour Party will never allow Brexit. Well, it does begin to look a little bit like that. I certainly think that, there was the toing and froing earlier in the year. There was the position in the election. There was the Marr interview, the sacking of the three front benchers. And I try to be... The reason I felt rather optimistic about it was it seemed to me that Corbyn's position as leader was pretty unassailable, and yet he's buckled. I'm going to Dara in Harrow. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Good. Are you a Labour voter, Dara? Tell me.
I mean, I'm a Labour member. I spoke to you back in Christmas, and I'm also someone who supports Brexit. And I know there are lots of Labour people, especially in the north of England, who hold that view. And I'm just going to read you the first sentence at the back of my membership card, Nigel. It says that the Labour Party is a democratic socialist party, and there is absolutely, completely nothing about the single market or the European Union which is in any way socialist, and that's why people like Tony Benn, Michael Foot and Dennis Skinner have always been against the EU. You know, you've got state aid rules which prevent us from nationalising failing industries and potentially protecting jobs. We have a free movement of people, which means that we can bring in as many people as we need, create an oversupply of labour and undercut wages and conditions. And we also have railway directives which prevent us from nationalising the railways.
Yes.
So the whole thing is completely set up to promote big business, and it is essentially a capitalist farce. And loads of people on the left are completely against it. So the idea that Jeremy Corbyn would do a U-turn on this to appease, the arch-Blairites in the party like Amuna, Liz Kendall and Tristram Hunt when he was an MP, I think is absolutely, completely disgraceful. And him and Diane Abbott and others should have the gumption to stand up and to say to Labour voters and Labour members, we are a socialist party, we can't support the single market because of that, and on top of that we must also respect the will of the people, and we need to have a clean sweep. Because even if you look at it from a neutral perspective as well, taking party politics aside, you can't leave an organisation if you don't leave all of its associated institutions.
Which was the point, Dara, that he was making on that Andrew Marr interview, wasn't it? And making it very clearly. I mean, Mrs Thatcher went to Europe in 1984 and said, I want my money back. Will you, Dara from Harrow, be going to Jeremy Corbyn and saying, I want my membership fee back?
I am Labour because I believe in the Labour Party principles, and I'm not going to be leaving the party. I think it's much better to have an internal debate about this and to attempt to change the party's direction in that way.
I think that debate finished yesterday with the Observer piece, don't you?
I do have to say, I do have a lot of sympathy with Labour voters in the north, especially traditional Labour voters, who a couple of years ago said, look, the Labour Party is a pro-EU party, and therefore we're going to go and support UKIP because of the fact that the Brexit issue is so important for a lot of people. We do have lots of working-class people who have had their wages undercut due to an oversupply of labour.
And again, Corbyn made that point on that Marr interview. Dara, just quickly, OK, you're going to stick it out with the Labour Party and fight for your beliefs, and you make the point very clearly that genuine socialism cannot happen as an EU member, and you're absolutely right to make that point. Do you think Corbyn has deceived voters?
I don't like to say this because I do think he's quite a generally honest person.
Come on, yes or no?
I think on this occasion, I think that him and some members of the Shadow Cabinet have essentially... I think that they've succumbed to some of the Blairites in the parliamentary party.
Right, I'll take that as a yes, Dara. I thank you very much for your call. And, OK, if we haven't spoken... 8 months ago is the last time we spoke. Keep in touch, and we'd love to sort of get the temperature of how a Labour member who's a Eurosceptic is feeling. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC, on this lovely Bank Holiday Monday, and it's 7:16.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
A manipulative lesbian has been jailed for 10 years for falsely claiming she was raped or sexually assaulted by 15 different men over 3 years. Why? She was trying to make her girlfriend jealous. Gemma Beale's lies saw an innocent man spend 2 years in jail. Joseph Cotry-Monson is a criminal defence lawyer who specialises in sexual offences.
I've been on an interview with an anti-rape campaign where that person has tried to maintain with credibility that there is no such thing as a false allegation.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Hampton by Hilton. Book direct for the lowest price.
Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
Moving house, nightmare. I need a plasterer, plumber, electrician, builder, painter, locksmith, gardener, and somebody to move my valuables, the drinks trolley. Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. They have all the tradespeople you can think of, reputable and reviewed, so you always get a job well done. Well done, me, I say, for getting it all sorted. I shall reward myself with a cheeky tipple from the trolley. Chin chin, pass me the gin. Visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com. I can't believe it. This is amazing. Thank you, universe.
Dave, it's just a shopping trolley.
It already had £1 in it.
That's what we call one of life's small victories. And here's another. Get a Vauxhall Astra SRI for just $215 a month, plus advance rental. Vauxhall. Isn't life brilliant? Search Small Victories. Personal contract hire. Advance rental of 4945. 35 monthly rentals of 215. Excess miles over contracted mileage of 24,000 over 36 months charged at 11 pence per mile. You will not own the car. T's and C's apply. Order by 2nd October 2017.
Welcome to London's exquisite Indian dining experience, Marla Restaurant. The finest North Indian cuisine in the most charming setting. Find us in the heart of one of London's divine hidden gems, St Catherine's Dock. Marla Restaurant. Visit us in St Catherine's Dock or go to marlarestaurant.co.uk.
Marla. Discover a jewel in London's secret paradise.
Hurry into Homebase for unmissable bank holiday deals. Right now, get Crown 2.5 litre standard coloured emulsion, just 2 for £22. Excludes pure brilliant white. Homebase, always low prices.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Well, the Labour Party position was clear. They were going to leave the single market and the customs union. Respect the Brexit vote. This was the position of the Labour leadership. And yet, that's all completely changed by 180 degrees because of an article written yesterday in The Observer by Sir Keir Starmer. And the new Labour Party position is that after we leave the EU, they want us to stay in the single market and the customs union for that transitional period. And when the shadow Brexit Secretary, Sir Keir Starmer, was pressed as to how long that should be, he said, as short as possible, but as long as necessary. I think what he meant was forever. I think they're trying to stop Brexit from happening. Rob says to me on Facebook, told you, Corbyn ain't the problem. It's the majority Labour MPs who want him out. Labour are Blairites. Corbyn's side died decades ago. Actually, Rob, inside the parliamentary party, that is right. Overwhelmingly, Labour MPs were Remain, and actually many of them still are. Lynn says, Corbyn changes direction more than a gazelle being chased by a lion. He's not being chased by a lion, Lynn, he's being chased by his own parliamentary party. Kevin's angry. He says it's a stick-up, Nigel. It'll be Brexit in name, but the EU will still be pulling the strings. Well, yes, interestingly, Keir Starmer said that during this transitional period, however long it may be, that we will abide by the common rules of the Union. Ian takes a different view. He says, Corbyn has won my vote by bringing this to my attention. OK. I wonder what Yvonne in Enfield makes of all of this. Yvonne, good evening.
Good evening. I voted Remain.
Yep.
But since the vote, we have to accept that we're going to leave. And I think Corbyn has done that.
He did, yeah.
Right.
He did. Well,
now,
Yvonne, I agree with that. And look, that's why I've actually quite consistently been praising him on this programme. And people say, why are you sticking up for Corbyn? And I kept saying, Yvonne, because actually he does believe in democracy. He does accept the referendum result. And I thought that he was going to fight pretty hard to keep Labour with that position. But Yvonne, it's looking very different today, isn't it?
He hasn't changed his position. We have seen David Davis go into meetings without any preparation or paperwork. The hash, the mess, the Eton mess they've made out of the whole thing. Corbyn wants to do things in a sensible manner and do it properly.
But why you? So why U-turn, Yvonne?
Why me the U-turn or why Corbyn the U-turn?
But why have the... I mean, listen, all of what you say, fine. And by the way, the fact that David Davis walks in with one piece of paper, some of the most brilliant people I've met in my life never, ever carry more than one side of A4 with them at any moment in time. The fact that photograph was put out does not mean Davis is unprepared. It really doesn't. But Yvonne, as of 48 hours ago, Corbyn's position was, we respect the vote, and the vote was clear, leaving the European Union means leaving the single market. It's now looking a bit different, isn't it?
It's not looking different.
Well, hang on, the policy's changed.
Can I just give you my opinion?
Yeah.
You have David Davis. Yeah, you say some people don't need pieces of paper. Too right, but the man doesn't even talk sense. They're not prepared. They never were prepared. They never expected to leave. These people now, Corbyn wants to do things in the proper manner. Now, we can be led by, and people had, my sister voted leave. There's plenty of people I know voted leave for very good reasons. For me personally, my reasons for leaving the EU now, as opposed to when I voted Remain, and it was Jeremy Corbyn that gave us the pros and the cons. That's why I voted Remain. He gave us the pros and the cons. Now, if we're going to let a few rabid racists go mad because they're not getting their own way just to come out of the single market, that's just the most ridiculous thing. We have to think with sensible things and think properly and see and make sure this thing is actually thought through properly.
So 24 hours ago, Yvonne, 24 hours ago, Jeremy Corbyn, having thought it through properly, following on from his Andrew Marr interview, said that the freedom of movement had to end because we did not need excessive Labour coming to this country from the European Union. That was his position. He argued it very clearly on the television. He argued it from the perspective of putting the interests of British workers first. And today Jeremy Corbyn's position is that we will continue with free movement of people for an unlimited period of time. Yvonne, the point I'm making is that actually he's not looking very principled here. And frankly, Yvonne, my view is that a lot of people voted Corbyn in that election believing what he said about free movement, and he's effectively deceived them.
Can I just finish by saying this? The operative word being transitional period, the operative words being transitional period. Now, a lot of people just didn't vote about Brexit in the election. They voted. There's other things on people's minds. There's corruption in the courts. There's people that can't pay bills. There's DWP, people dying on PIP. There's a lot more things than Brexit that people are thinking about. And when they do leave, if we do leave, they want to know the kind of government that they're going to have. And I don't think May's dictatorship of the government is anything anybody wants.
Well, I tell you what, Yvonne, we will have other phone-ins about how the Tory party are handling the negotiations, and I'm not wholly impressed with that, I can assure you. But Yvonne, just quickly, are you perfectly happy with this total U-turn by Jeremy Corbyn?
There hasn't been a U-turn. There's been a thoughtful process that's going into this. It's not a U-turn. It's saying we want to do things properly. The operative word being transitional and then the other words being period means do this properly. Don't rush into anything. Don't run head fast into something that we'll regret later. If you think it through, plan it properly.
I don't trust him, Yvonne.
And then you can implement it.
I don't trust them, Yvonne. This is a Blairite, Europhile party, and I don't trust them one little bit. But I thank you for your comments and your call. And I go to Danielle in Cottingham, in Yorkshire. Good evening, Danielle.
Hi, Farage.
Hi. So, what do you think that a Labour voter in Yorkshire, particularly one who voted Brexit, is feeling tonight about Jeremy Corbyn?
I don't like Corbyn at all. I voted the opposite way. I thought, do I vote for a liar or do I vote for someone that I don't trust either? And it was one I know. I'm not fully against Tories as such because Theresa May is kind of doing a good job. She's given some kind of backbone to the EU, but Corbyn did a whole U-turn and I knew it was going to happen. So I thought, no, I can't vote Labour. And then with Tory and Labour being the biggest parties, I thought I really wanted to vote UKIP, but I knew they wouldn't win, and so I didn't want to take the vote away from Tories, with Labour being on the back, on the tail, basically.
But what does this do for trust, Danny? I mean, you yourself have just said you don't like either of the big parties very much. But I mean, I have a feeling that today there'll be a lot more people than there were yesterday saying, "Gar, why should we trust any of them?" I mean, how can Sir Keir Starmer, how can he say so clearly in the election the reasons why we must leave the single market and now say we must stay for goodness knows how many years?
I have no idea. It's clear deceiving. They wanted the votes just so they can do what they want.
Danielle, do you feel that Brexit is still going to happen?
The way things looking, no, but it means that all those that voted Brexit must stand up and basically say what's happening to democracy.
Yes, actually, do you know what? That's a very good point. Thank you. This is about democracy. It is about trust. It is about a Labour manifesto. It is about what was said, in the run-up to the Queen's speech by the leader of the Labour Party, backed up very strongly, by the way, by John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, and now they've completely changed direction. Tariq says, no doubt in my mind that Jeremy Corbyn will be Prime Minister. Well, probably, Tariq, he's thinking more about that than he is his own political principles, and I think less of him as a result of today. Lynn says, Corbyn... Oh, no, I've had Lynn already. Let's go to David in Worksop. David, good evening.
Hello, yeah, I think you've more or less just said what the gist of my call is. It's a very crafty plot by the Labour Party. They want to go against what the government general stance will be, and thus force a vote of no confidence. What they want to do is get SNP and the rest of the mob together to defeat the government by going totally against what they feel that the government stance will be, i.e. to leave the single market and the customs union. And so force a vote of no confidence in the government.
Yep. David, I've lost you. This is tragic. David, are you there?
Yes. And just let me tell you one thing else.
Yep.
The Labour Party are already positioning themselves for a general election. And I think they've got about 60 target seats, including Ian Duncan-Smith, Anna Soubry, quite a few others, Philip Davis in Shipley, they don't like him. And they're already knocking on doors, they're canvassing, they've got meetings on a regular basis, preempting an election. So all they have to do, they'll do anything to get in power. They don't care about being in the EU or not. They want power.
Yes, I would agree with that, David, and yet, I have a feeling that what they've done today may well backfire, because actually there are a lot of those seats in the Midlands and the North that are, and South Wales and other parts of the country as well, that are strong Brexit areas, who I think will be pretty unhappy with this. David, I thank you for the call. I tell you what, I can't see any reason why they should target Anna Soubry, because if they're going to beat the government in a vote of confidence on the single market, I'd have thought it's more likely that Anna Soubry would actually be on their side. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC on this lovely bank holiday. It's 7:30 and time for the news with Moira Alderson.
There's a warning. Catastrophic flooding, which has hit the city of Houston because of Hurricane Harvey, is likely to get worse. Engineers are planning to release even more water from nearby overflowing reservoirs. A minute's silence was held this afternoon at London's Notting Hill Carnival in memory of those who died in the Grenfell Tower fire. Firefighters joined the partygoers to remember at least 80 people who were killed in the building, which is near the route of the parade. Forecasters think today could be the UK's warmest late August bank holiday on record. Temperatures reached 28.2 degrees Celsius in parts of Lincolnshire. LBC weather, some cloud and light rain will spread into northern England and Wales overnight, staying dry, clear and warm in the south with an overnight low of 17 degrees.
LBC travel on the M4 in West London. It's slow eastbound through junction 4 for Heathrow after an accident earlier. Also in West London, because of the Notting Hill Carnival, there are road closures to the south of Harrow Road and to the north of Notting Hill Gate. To the west of those closures, we've got queues in both directions on Scrubs Lane. In Kent, the M2 is crawling London bound from junction 7 to 6 outside Faversham. In Essex, there's a queue on the southbound M11 after junction 9 for Saffron Walden, with reports of an accident. Also in Essex, an accident's causing queues on the northbound A133 at Little Clacton, and there are long delays heading from Bournemouth to Ringwood on the A338 and then on the eastbound A31, all down to bank holiday traffic. LBC Travel, I'm Mark Percy.
This is LBC.
Love your skin, love your hair, love your nails. Perfectil delivers nutritional support from within, including zinc, to help you maintain normal skin, hair and nails. Perfectil, the science of beauty, from Vitabiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company. From Boots, pharmacies and Vitabiotics.com.
I can't believe it. This is amazing. Thank you, universe.
Dave, it's just a shopping trolley.
It already had £1 in it.
That's what we call one of life's small victories. And here's another. Get a Vauxhall Astra SRI for just $215 a month, plus advance rental. Vauxhall, isn't life brilliant? Search small victories. Personal contract hire, advance rental of $4,945, 35 monthly rentals of $215, excess miles over contracted mileage of 24,000 over 36 months charged at 11 pence per mile. You will not own the car. T's and C's apply. Order by 2nd October 2017.
Moving house, nightmare. I need a plasterer, plumber, electrician, builder, painter, locksmith, gardener, and somebody to move my valuables, the drinks trolley. Relax, relax. It's Trust a Trader. They have all the tradespeople you can think of, reputable and reviewed, so you always get a job well done. Well done me, I say, for getting it all sorted. I shall reward myself with a cheeky tipple from the trolley. Chin chin, pass me the gin. Visit trustatrader.com.
The Virgin Atlantic worldwide sale is now on. It's your chance to rock to a different rhythm on a Caribbean beach. Or book your place next to the high rollers and pool party goers in legendary Las Vegas. Even touch down on the rolling streets of San Francisco before road tripping down the West Coast. Book now and fly in style to some of the best places in the world with our worldwide sale. Virgin Atlantic, let it fly. Travel restrictions and T&Cs apply. Visit virginatlantic.com to book.
The Nigel Farage Show. Text 84850.
Well, the Labour Party have changed their position pretty radically. Sir Keir Starmer laying out that after we leave the EU, they now want us to stay part of the customs union and the single market for a period of time. How long? We do not know. But we're told that it will be as short as possible, but as long as is necessary. And I don't trust that phrase one little bit. Meanwhile, spare a thought for people in America, where this storm that has come in, Harvey, and 30,000 people in Texas have now sought refuge in shelters. It's expected that nearly 500,000 people are going to be so badly affected by this that they will need to get some sort of disaster aid of some kind. And the numbers are staggering, that some areas have already had 30 inches of rain. So they've had a whole year's worth of rain in the last 48 hours, and there's more to come. The storm is now moving eastwards, and Louisiana is the next threatened state. Trump has approved an emergency aid request, and Trump and the First Lady Melania will be travelling to Texas tomorrow. And I would have thought the Republican Party have learned a lesson. If you think back to Hurricane Katrina, which was so devastating for New Orleans and places like that. And President Bush, the photograph, if you remember, was President Bush in an aeroplane looking over the flooded areas. And I think it sort of said to many people, the Republicans are out of touch. So Trump will be turning up and meeting people in Texas tomorrow. And one other domestic story today that really did get me thinking, and I thought was very, very worrying, and it concerns Tower Hamlets Council and a 5-year-old girl, a Christian girl, brought up, christened in this country, and she's now been put into foster care. She's now been with 2 families, in which both cases the women wear niqabs, where she's been told not to wear the cross, the Christian symbol around her neck. She's been told that Christmas and Easter are stupid, and that European women are stupid and alcoholic. And I just think to myself, how on earth can this be happening in our country at the same time that a couple that I know in Rotherham, who are foster carers, were taken off the foster caring list because they were public supporters of UKIP? I think the wrong people are running child services right throughout this country. But back to Mr. Corbyn. Did he, by getting your votes in the election, by making it clear they would end free movement, that we'd leave the single market, has Corbyn lost his political principles? Has he deceived the British public? And I'm going to ask Frederico in High Wycombe that very question.
Hello, Mr. Farage. First of all, I would like to say that we met actually a few years ago at the International Cricket Council. There was some kind of game, and I really consider you a very nice person.
Well, that must have been that was at Lord's, wasn't it? Yes.
Yes. Right. Yes.
I remember that day. That's right. That was when I was. Yeah, I don't do many things in the European Union, but one thing I have been trying a little bit to do is to support the International Cricket Council's efforts to spread cricket across much of Europe. So that's why I was there. And by the way, for anyone listening who is a cricket fan, and there'll be quite a few of you out there who are, England, who this time yesterday looked like losing this test match, now look like winning it. And that's why I love the game, Frederico, because it just changes so quickly. Frederico, thank you for your kind words. Are you a Labour supporter?
No, I'm not a Labour supporter. I'm Italian, so I'm out of politics.
Right.
I'm just only a critical observer.
Yeah.
So for what I have seen, so I don't really like Corbyn particularly. But the problem is, I think that you have forgot something. The problem is economy. Mm-hmm. That is the problem. So I don't know if you have understood, but or you've checked, but the pound has the value more than 20%. So basically, is a cut on the wage of British people of 20%. Okay, in some kind of airport, the pound actually exchange rate is, I think, 83 pence.
But that's just outright robbery, and quite, Federico, quite why we have all these regulatory authorities sitting in their ivory towers in Canary Wharf. Why things like that aren't dealt with, I don't know. But it's interesting, as an Italian, it's very interesting you telling me that the pound's weak and it's affecting us, because actually in Italy's being killed by a currency that is too high, isn't it?
Okay, Mr. Farage, just to give you a background, I'm an academic, so when I speak, I use evidence. Okay.
So Federico, you say the pound's fallen 20%. In fact, it's bouncing a bit, but in Italy, would a 20% fall in the value of the Italian currency be a benefit right now to the Italian people?
Not an Italian. There is not an Italian currency. We have euro.
Well, isn't that the point? Isn't that the point? I mean, hasn't Italian manufacturing, and by the way, I used to do a lot of business in Italy 20 years ago, haven't Italian youth, I mean, haven't they effectively paid a massive price for giving up their own currency?
Okay, so if I just only can explain my thing, just for 1 second. I agree with you. I'm not a fan of the European Union either.
Right.
The thing is, however, that is the best system in place that we can have. Now, just only if I can explain. If you go to the grocery, you will find out, I do my grocery, hopefully you do the same, you will find out that the price of grocery have increased. Jobs, quite a few jobs now, that will go to Berlin, and the European country are fighting about agencies from the European Union that they will go actually in Europe. Now, I just advance an hypothesis that the Labour Party, seeing the mess that the Tory party, and believe me, I am from the centre-right, see the mess that the Tory party is doing with the negotiations, because the worst things that they have done is really to antagonize the European Union with the citizen rights. And I'm telling you, I have a permanent residence and I don't have any problem. So the problem is that the Tories are doing a mess. And probably, I'm telling you today, in Britain, which I love because I lived here since 1998, will crash out these negotiations, because the Tories, unfortunately, they have their own problem internally, so they have to appease people like you that they want to do Brexit without thinking about the consequences, which then the people that they don't have money will pay in their pocket. So my idea, I advance an idea, that the idea of Corbyn, because, I mean, I am a behavioral scientist, and the sign of intelligence is to change time's mind when the situation change. We have not come out of Europe yet, and the economy of UK is the slowest economy in the European Union at the moment.
Well, Federico, look, you know, as you know and I know, these things go in cycles. All I would say to you is this, that the pound started falling way before the referendum had even been called. You know, that sterling has been falling very steadily since 2010 and quite sharply since 2014. And you know something? I'm going to disagree with you on the economics. I think there's a great big world outside of the European Union, because 85% of the global GDP is not within the Eurozone. But, Federico, there's something else that I want to point out to you, and it's this, that when experts of any kind tell us you're going to be better off or worse off, we're quite cynical. The Brexit vote wasn't about whether we're going to be better off or worse off. The Brexit vote, Federico, was about democracy, about governing our country and controlling our borders. So, do you see, in a sense, I'm not sure that if the Labour Party are banking on worsening economics, that actually makes a huge difference, because there are bigger things at stake. But I thank you very much for your thoughts and for your call. And certainly, as I say, if Italy had its own currency, it would be considerably lower than it is today, and there'd be fewer young people unemployed. Joe in Sheffield, are you a Labour voter, Joe?
I can say so. Recently, I came into this country as an immigrant some 7 years ago. I started with voting Conservatives. In 2013, I switched to UKIP, and right now I'm supporting Mr. Corbyn.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a Labour supporter right now, I would say so.
So are you happy that all the things that he'd said during the election and since the election have been thrown out of the window?
I'm not happy. As a Brexit supporter, as one who voted Brexit and campaigned ferociously for Brexit, of course I'm disappointed. But I think the larger picture is the power dynamics in Labour Party. The Labour Party, by and large, are people that are remainers.
No, you got it right first time, Joe.
A leopard cannot change his skin overnight. Corbyn and the socialists in the Labour Party are the minority. They don't hold the power reins as of yet. So it's going to be difficult for Corbyn, turning 360 degrees, the opinion of rampant, rabid Remoaners like Shuka Umuna and others, that they should follow him out of the single market and custom union. And I think Corbyn might have performed a deft political move like he did just 3-4 months ago during the general election. It's the same position Corbyn found himself last year during the referendum. And he said, instead of fighting my party and fighting tooth and nail, I better just go along with my party, knowing that overall people might vote out, Brexit might win. So I think Corbyn is probably seeing the larger picture that by the time the chance or opportunity comes for me to get into number 10, we'll be done with Brexit anyway. It's the Conservatives that are going to execute Brexit, and they will not be so mad again to call for another general election.
Well, Joe, in terms of political calculations, you may well be right. It might be the clever thing to do. But, Joe, it isn't very principled, is it, for a man who's fought the European Union since 1983 to have done this? And I think that as somebody with a reputation as a straight speaker, this damages his reputation. Would you agree with that, Joe, or not?
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I want you to understand, Farage, and like you two must have found yourself in this position many times as a leader of your party.
Do you know what, Joe? Joe, do you know what?
Hello?
Party leaders, Joe, often have to do things they don't want to do. The question is, this is the most important issue of the day, and I think a man who has been so clear where he stood for 35 years on this, I don't think he comes out of it very well. Joe, I thank you very much for your fascinating call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC on this lovely bank holiday. It's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
The war of words between Jeremy Hunt and Stephen Hawking is raging on. So who's right? Is the NHS heading for privatisation? And is it better funded than ever?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Westway, there's no other way.
Save way more with a nearly new delivery miles only bargain from Westway Nissan. Hurry and you'll make incredible RRP savings on selected 66 and 17 plate Nissans, like up to 30% off X-Trails, up to 26% off Micras, up to 35% off Notes, up to 37% off Dukes, and up to 38% off a Qashqai. Be quick, stock is limited, and once they're gone, they're gone. So
Google Westway Nissan today.
Fancy the thrill of being a city trader, but don't know your footsie from your Forex? Well, now you can gamble on something you really do understand by betting on Football Index, the football trading exchange. Simply buy and sell top players on Football Index for real cash. Trade up to £500 risk-free. And if you don't love Football Index, we'll give you your money back. Go to footballindex.co.uk or download the app and become a football trader today. Over 18s and new customers only. Deposit required. Other terms apply. Gamble responsibly.
Sometimes it can be hard to keep your show on the road, but new Car Genie from the AA makes things easier. Car Genie helps predict and prevent breakdowns. Just plug it into your car and it will warn you and us if there's a potential problem. That should keep you rolling. New Car Genie from the AA, because anything can happen. Compatible vehicles only. Check the AA.com for details.
Fletcher Day is no ordinary law firm. Finding creative and long-lasting solutions to the legal problems faced by our clients is what we do best. With offices in central London, our team of experienced solicitors take the time to understand your needs. If you're looking for bright and creative lawyers to help you maximise business opportunities or solve complex legal problems, contact Fletcher Day Solicitors at fletcherday.co.uk. Fletcher Day, passionate about law.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
The Blairites, the internationalists as they call themselves, and the corporates have had a very good 48 hours as they've got the Labour Party to completely change its policy. They now, after we leave, for a transitional period of time that could last, who knows, forever, want us to stay part of the customs union and the single market, and crucially, freedom of movement of people within the EU will continue. Philip says to me, I have always voted Labour. But after Corbyn's announcement, it'll be a long time before I consider voting for Labour again. The one thing I've learnt is you can't trust or believe our mainstream politicians. Philip, that is what got me into politics in the first place. I felt so let down by the whole thing 25 years ago. And for me, it was when we joined the exchange rate mechanism. You know, we pegged sterling effectively against the Deutschmark. I thought it was a mad thing to do. Everybody told me I was wrong. It was the right thing to do, and it was the wrong thing to do. And then the same group of people told us if we didn't join the euro, the City of London would disappear, manufacturing would go, investment would freeze. If we didn't join the euro, Britain was finished. Well, thank goodness we didn't join the euro, and they were wrong again. And they're wrong again today by telling us that our future is to be tied up in this over-regulated customs union and single market, when, of course, we want to be friends and trade with our European neighbours, but there's a bigger, more exciting world out there. That's certainly my view, and I think it's now increasingly the view of the British people by quite a clear majority, just not the people we have sitting in Parliament. Hi, Mr Farage. What is your problem with both the UK and the EU living in peace and sharing prosperity with each other, says James. Well, James, if by sharing you mean giving them £10 billion net every year, you mean giving them our fishing waters, you mean us not being able to have our traditional friendships around the world, I wouldn't call that sharing, I'd call it giving. And that's why we got Brexit, James. Stop replaying the Brexit arguments. You should be an MP, probably one in the Labour Party, if that's what you want to do. Gordon is calling me from Linney in the Netherlands. Gordon, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I was on earlier this year with you.
I remember you were back in January, I think it was, or something. Very good to hear from you again.
Because I read every manifesto, because I'm a bit of a geek.
I had to wonder at the fact that you had read all the manifestos. Now, Gordon, as our manifesto expert, and we're going to get you on speed dial, I think, when this sort of thing comes up again, but the Labour manifesto was very clear on this, wasn't it?
It was very clear because Mr Corbyn, well, as he's affectionately known in the circles on Facebook as Steptoe, he kept banging on about keeping us all and keeping with this Brexit deal and keep us out of the EU. Now he wants to reverse everything that we have voted for. 17.4 million people can't be really wrong when they turn around and said, you know what, we want out, and even Labour voters. Now, as the young man earlier said, he was a Labour supporter and a socialist, so that means democratic rights come into this. But as you said, Nigel, earlier, we talk about the Blairites. Now, this goes back now, we can go back to the Barcelona Agreement of 2010, which I honestly have dug into, and I've tried to seek up all this, the minutes from where Mr Blair and his gang told the House about the Barcelona Agreement and what it entailed. And now this is all starting to come above water, where the open borders, we was forced to have African nations and Islamic nations such as Algeria and Morocco all sitting around the table who aren't members of the EU, and we have this forced upon us, and where there was no vote in the House of Commons taken. Now, when Brexit happened, we had the likes of Gina Miller, who was just looking for 15 minutes of fame.
Well, she certainly got it, didn't she? Of that was no doubt. In fact, she got hours of fame. But Gordon, I mean, back to the key question: do you think that effectively what Corbyn has done is to give up on his own principles and effectively to have deceived the public in the general election campaign?
Well, he's deceived them before. He deceived all the students with, you're going to get free stuff and free tuition fees.
I was waiting for someone to say that tonight. Yes, quite. So this image of the straight-speaking, honest guy, Jeremy Corbyn, is beginning to come apart at the seams, isn't it?
Well, he's not coming apart at the seams. He's backpedalling. Somebody's got to him, and he wants to stay in the EU, same as Keir Starmer, Diane Abbott and the rest of the gang. But his backbenchers that want out, he's keeping them silent.
Well, there aren't many of them. That's the truth. There aren't many of them. The Labour Party, traditionally, of course, going way back, was a lot more Eurosceptic than the Tory Party. The Blair period changed that party completely. He's bowing very much to backbench pressure. And I do understand that party leaders have to make all sorts of compromises. I did. Not very many, but I did. But on an issue as important as this, I think it damages his reputation. I think it damages trust in politics. Gordon, I thank you very much for your expertise on international agreements, on manifestos. It's great to have you on the show, but, Gordon, you do need to get out more. Honestly, you do. Hi, Nigel. Perhaps Keir Starmer is the real power behind the Labour throne, and Corbyn is the puppet. Starmer and his friends are pulling the strings. That's what Laura in Shenfield thinks. And Jennifer thinks that Corbyn has betrayed himself as well as the voters. Shame on him. Well, there we are. There is no chance of us leaving Europe. The Prime Minister does not have the votes. Face it, Nigel, you will lose in the end. Well, I have to say that is the one big worry. Whilst the country becomes clearer that Brexit is the right thing to do, our political class, who never wanted it in the first place, are doing their very best to reverse it. And that is what Starmer was about yesterday. I'm going to go to Gary in Spalding in Lincolnshire. Gary, good evening.
Oh, hi, Nigel. Hi. I'm a Labour voter myself, and I also voted for Brexit.
Right. You're just the kind of caller I'm looking for tonight. So, I mean, what's going on, Gary? How do you feel about your leader?
Well, to be quite honest, what I think he's done is he's perhaps looked at the situation and the current climate and maybe thought, well, actually, things are not going to go as we would have hoped, and therefore it's time to adapt to that situation. I think that's probably what he's doing.
But what situation? Do you mean his backbenchers, or do you mean the country?
No, I mean the country. I think there's perhaps a bit of fear that set in terms of the economy and jobs and everything like that. And I think he is a man that prides jobs, and puts them, prioritises them. And I think maybe there's a bit of fear that set in, and now he's
well, Gary.
Do that.
Well, Gary, if he's prioritising jobs. And he made that very clear on that Andrew Marr interview, that we would not have unlimited, open immigration from Europe because of putting the interests of British workers first. He's just turned his back on that, hasn't
he? Potentially. I mean, the situation really there would be that there's not going to be that, the people to fill those jobs straight away. And I think that's perhaps where they're looking at this transitional arrangement. I think there is going to be a situation at the next general election where the previous one is a case of people voted for Corbyn and some people voted for Labour, and I think that now half of that situation might now be gone. So I think it is going to damage the next election.
No, I think I'd rather agree. I mean, Gary, do you know what? We didn't vote for transitional arrangements. We voted to leave. Now, I accept there has to be a negotiation. It took the government 9 months to trigger Article 50. The Article 50 process is 2 years. The government now wants the transitional period to go on to the next general election in 2022, and it looks like the Labour Party, or at least Keir Starmer, wants it to go on forever. Gary, if there was a general election tomorrow, would you still vote for Corbyn?
Yeah, I would, purely because I think the alternative at the moment is a lot worse. I don't think the Conservatives are handling this at all well.
Fine.
And I think it's actually making the situation worse. And I think the other part of the fear really is the fact that the EU are being so rigid and inflexible with moving forward that that's why they're probably looking at this transitional arrangement.
You may be right. Gary, I thank you very much indeed. Nee in Bedford says to me, the Corbyn team are making a calculation that those who voted Brexit will be replaced by the student vote and other Remain supporting voters. Well, Nee, they may be making that calculation, but let me tell you something. The country has changed significantly in the course of the last year. You know, it is about 70% of people want Brexit to happen. It's just our political class never wanted actually to give us a referendum in the first place. Certainly didn't want Brexit to be the result, and will now do what they can to get this thing watered down. The great Brexit betrayal is on. Sir Keir Starmer is very much a part of it. He said shamefully in the election that we'd leave the single market because we had to control immigration, but clearly he didn't mean it. Corbyn should have held the line on this one and not given in to the Blairites on his backbenches. In doing so, he will pay a price for this, because you can't go on being thought to be a pretty straight kind of guy if you do this sort of thing. And I think the Labour Party may well pay a price for this in many Midlands and Northern seats. That's my view. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on this bank holiday. Now, I'm back tomorrow at the earlier time of 4 p.m, because I'll be sitting in for Ian Dale on Drive for the rest of the week.